taken the DEO growth model, which Jake, I think is just absolutely brilliant, as you know, which is around grow yourself, grow your team, grow your organization. Like that framework, I just keep coming back to and say, okay, is this my mindset issue? Is this somewhere around the team that I've got to solve? Or is it something with the organization, kind of systems, processes, those kind of things.
Cash, finances, those kind of things. Yep.
Yeah. And we've talked about it as a slinky too, that you keep moving up. So you get you right, and that gets you so you can have the right mindset for team and you grow the organization. Well, then your own mindset has to grow as well. Well, within that stack, one of the things is I'm talking to, different clinicians, business partners at different levels. There's this movement from clinician to entrepreneur and then entrepreneur to executive. And I want to kind of just talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, hello, DSO Secrets family and community. Yeah, we're just so excited. I mean, we're in so much momentum. I am personally, DEO is, Emmet, you. It's just so much great stuff. And I know a lot of people are running into challenges right now, but man, there's also another side of this, which just is pure momentum, right? So feeling good, excited. And I would even love to take that kind of 3-step process and even maybe put some revenue numbers on it, roughly where we see, not hard lined. I have some numbers that I think that comes into, and you can think of it as, let's outline your 3-step kind of progression through the career.
Okay. Yeah. And you could probably, because you have the statistics, the members and where the industry kind of struggles at each level. So maybe you could lay in the numbers on this. Yep. So what I've noticed in talking is you've got the clinician who's trying to get out of the chair, right? Which frankly isn't different than a lot of industries where you've got the technician. This is the whole premise of E-Myth, right? You've got the technician who's trying to work on the business instead of in the business, those kind of principles and things. And so, you've got, and we're going to have a summit coming up here, Jake. We've got one for just the immersion members, but then we've got an open summit. Is that in November?
That's in November. So that's kind of, we're going to talk about later, one of the things that perplexes you in the industry when you go to events, right? What you want to see more of.
In general, as we're talking through this, if you think about it, you're moving from clinician to entrepreneur. Okay, at least this is one framework that I use. I think a lot of the world uses technician to entrepreneur. And what's difficult about that is you're moving from working directly with the customer into working on the business, which is indirectly with the customer. You're working through your team on the customer. And it takes a new level of trust and all of these things, right? So that's the tough part. And you're getting out of your trade. I mean, as I was talking through this with these doctors getting ready for this panel, I was fascinated by, you do all of this schooling and then to just kind of like walk away from it, right? And say, okay, I'm not going to do that tactical activity. And I might not even have my student loans paid off yet, from learning that. Now, obviously, it allows you to lead the clinical, allows you to own the practices, et cetera. So it's not like it's a waste or anything, but it's got to be a mental work to move from clinician to entrepreneur. Okay. Now, that's the hard part. Here's the part that's easy about it, though. And the reason I want to point this out is because when you move to the next level, the other part becomes hard, is it's still all about you. I mean, the reality is being an amazing clinician is all about you. And being an amazing entrepreneur, it's still a hub and spoke system where you're leading a lot of the vision as well as the tactical outcomes. You're making decisions. Hey, what payroll company, what IT, how's this going to work? Who are we going to hire for this, et cetera? Entrepreneurship is very much a hub and spoke system. And it's meant to be because you're innovating right there at the business level. You're getting direct feedback, et cetera. And you're kind of figuring out your business model, right? Like, who is your real avatar? Who are you taking care of, et cetera? Now, I'll kind of shorten this. We'll talk about this more in DEO, but the next move is moving from entrepreneur to executive. Now, this is easy because you're already working on the business, and executive, you're still working on the business. But the hard part on this one is you're trusting other people to a whole nother level, right? Like, I don't think people realize it, but part of the hard part of moving to executive impact level, which by the way, your impact goes up dramatically as you move up. Like, I think a lot of times the reason clinicians want to move from clinician to entrepreneur is, yes, I love taking care of patients, but I can take care of more patients as an entrepreneur than I could seeing them one by one. How many can I fit on my schedule? Well, executive is that exponentially. The problem is now you have to trust the accounting CFO. He's really, or she's making the decision on what accounting platform you're on. You're not making those decisions anymore. And most people will say, well, yeah, I don't want to. And there's a reason that you're not quickly moving. In fact, some people, I talked about this as glorifying the grind. Some people are actually like, well, no, I need to make those decisions because that's where I get I help impact the team, et cetera. So we have some mindset, again, go back to the growth model, the you mindset to be able to impact the team, to impact the organization. So anyway, just giving that as a framework, we thought it'd be fun to put it here on live. Start thinking about where you're at on that spectrum as far as like clinician, technician, entrepreneur, executive. And I think that's what everybody's going to be moving towards. And when I talk about getting project managers, starting to think through your executive trust that you're moving, that's that. And it's fun because more of the industry is starting to move towards that, where that's the question they're asking. Still plenty trying to get from clinician to entrepreneur. So.
Yeah, and so I've thought about this a lot, and I've kind of overlaid this across the industry from what I've seen. And really, if you think dentistry is interesting because you have the player coach, right? You have the clinician who's bringing a lot of the revenue, and it's hard to let go of that and bring somebody else in who's going to bring in, and most dentists, DSO dentist owners are high producers, very high producers. So it's tough. Now, to what I've seen, that going from clinical to entrepreneur is about the 2 million mark, somewhere between that 2 and 3 million mark, because you're at that point, you have to bring on two, a second, a third associate, if you're, and depending how high producing you are, and you really need to start driving the business forward versus just the clinical. So I think that 2 to 3 million. And then where we see people getting stuck from the entrepreneur to executive is about that 5 to 10 million mark. So at some point, when you're the entrepreneur, you're driving things forward. We call it like a hero culture. You look around and your business is good. It's, you're impacting a lot of people, but you're also working a ton and you're the one driving things forward. And you feel like if you stopped, the business would stop. So at some point, that's not enough. And that's when you move to the executive level. So Emmett,
ultimately, Jake, this is about like your impact meter, right?
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with just staying and being a great clinician.
No.
Like there's nothing wrong. That could be your mission. You say, listen, I have a smaller circle that I impact than some entrepreneur, clinician, and business partner, but it's really meaningful to me, and that's all I need, right? And that's okay. And that's what I love about DEO growth model, again, is the vision sits in the middle. Like, what's your vision? But others say, I need to impact more. And others say, I need to impact more. I need to impact more. And that's what makes it fun, is just trying to figure it out at every level.
And that's kind of what's unique about the DSO secrets and DEO community is that, there's, in a lot of us, there's just something in us that wants to keep growing and finding new challenges. So I would say, Emmett, too, at that 5 million roughly mark. And at some point, you have to, and tell me if this aligns with what you're saying. Like when you're in that entrepreneur stage, it's like you're hiring people and you're working with that 80% framework where it's like, you're just trying to train them up. You're trying to get them to a point where they can do the job. You probably could come in and do a lot of the jobs better because you know more and whatnot. But then you need to start hiring people that are better than you, like literally better than you, right? Like you could never be as good as them. And that's what happens at that executive level, is like you're surrounded by, you're almost, you're humbled because you don't know anything about what they're talking about, but you need that.
Yeah, I remember when Sergi and Paige, like they wrote something around how they couldn't get a job at Google as a programmer anymore, right? And this was like still somewhat early on, but they had this mindset. That's how you create a Google impact, right? Like I was talking to someone, like Elon Musk isn't out there like screwing in the screws for the rocket and Tesla and so forth, right? Half the design he probably doesn't understand. He's just the one saying, we're going to Mars, we're going to Mars, we're going to Mars, we're doing solar energy, and he's driving that vision. So it's these different mindsets, which again, the growth model brings you through. You got to get it right.
And let me make another distinction too that I see. So it's like you're in the entrepreneur stage, and there's many types, but two that I see the most, especially with dentists, is you have one, the hard charging entrepreneur, who is the best, the smartest person in the room most of the times, not in a bad way. They just, you get to 4 or 5 million and you've done it almost by pure brute, right? Just talent and being a hustler and just like working hard. And then Jake, I do see
dentistry, I think you can get higher. I mean, because the margins are so good,
for sure.
The revenues are good. You can get up into the 10 and 15s even.
Which is unique to dentistry.
Yeah.
So some of the business I see come through that are at 12, 15 million, and the lack of executives in that business and the lack of infrastructure, it's pretty unique. But then there's the other kind of dentist who's really, really, fun easy to work for, really, amiable and like just a great kind of personality, and has a team around them that's pretty powerful. And where I see that weakness is actually setting the vision, really being that visionary and really telling the team, this is where we're going, because, they are hands off and they've developed the team, but sometimes the team doesn't know exactly where they're going. So that's that entrepreneurial level.
Yeah. And I've noticed there's 2 mindset blocks, which are probably pretty subconscious. One of them is kind of the need to be needed piece, which I think we have lots of language and scripting that allows us to not say that, but it's true. Number 2 is we don't know always what we're going to do if someone takes our job, right? We always tell our employees and team members, like, hey, you need to be transitioning people up so you can move up. But sometimes we're a little bit nervous, like, well, if they take all that on, what do I do, right? And we need to be pushing ourselves to that level of lack of comfort, where we're like, ooh, am I going to be able to bring value to my company anymore?
My own team.
If this person's like amazing and better at that than I am, and so those, again, work on you to get to team, to get to organization. So this is fun stuff, and it's fun. Here's what I love, Jake. This was my previous life, right? At Entrepreneur Advisors, this is what I was helping. And everybody says, my industry is unique, blah, 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 blah. It's always the same. It's you, team, organization, structure that you see in DEO. I think what's fun is this industry is kind of starting to mature into these conversations. So I'm getting excited because I get to have a better conversation than we've had in the past.
Well, and quite honestly, I hope these conversations like this are helping people out there to kind of level that up. And then finally, we got just a couple more minutes. Wanted to touch on, Emmett, one of the things that when you look at events, either live or virtual, and kind of the DSO industry has a lot of events. Shameless plug, DEO's industry event, the summit in November, where Jocko Willing's going to speak, Solomon Ahmed, Samson, Dr. Lou. But you were just mentioning how you're always kind of surprised what you see. Maybe you can share, and this isn't a bad way.
I mean, first of all, people will say, well, Emmett, you do that because you have a big team, blah, blah, blah. I started off with 19 people, 10 people, 19 people, like everybody else, single practice, etc. And one of the things, and I'm trying to deconstruct what I've done to scale so I can share it. It's just like you all, you have things you're just naturally more intuitive on, and it's not like you're trying to hide it. One of the things, Jake, as we've talked, is whenever I went somewhere, people would always give me a hard time because it was like, this whole groupie, because I just always bring my team members, because one of the things I found, and I'm sure you guys do, you go to a conference, you're really excited, maybe you're sitting there texting your team the whole time, and mostly they're like annoyed, and it's like, and they're like, oh, there he is. And then your follow through is not super good. So what I found is if I bring my team to stuff, they get inspired. And they're like, Emmett, do you know what else we should be doing? Do you know what else? Well, now they're dragging me. And that's where I always want to be, is like my team pushing. I'll tell you oftentimes too, I'm like, oh, I wish I could go to this, this, and this. No, really what I wish is Norma could go to this one, King can go to this one, Jody can go to this one. And so I've noticed that there is a pattern that individuals who bring their team members early on and kind of circumvent themselves, like they tap the team directly into the power, and then the team's driving it forward. So anyway,
so the message is, yeah, consider bringing your team. And even if you're on the fence and it feels a little bit uneasy, that's what it feels like when you start not being the smartest person in the room, right? And so think about bringing your team. And because I always think like when you go to, if you're texting, you're playing the telephone game, right? There's an amazing message coming on stage, and then you're losing some of it in your text inevitably, or you're taking all these notes, you have these great epiphanies, and every piece of knowledge, I think about little chunks, like a little chunk of knowledge goes in my brain. I have to go back to my office and then give it to somebody. Why not just have them hear it?
Well, and in fairness, Jake, sometimes where you're at in your progress, the way you're hearing it, is it too far ahead of your team too? So having them there, they'll hear it, but they'll only hear it in this increment, and that's okay because that's all they would have heard anyway. And so that's the other thing that I think, you know, you circumvent, because if I hear it and I hear it all the way over here and then I try to communicate, they can't even understand what I'm talking about. And all of us have seen this. We come back, we're telling our team, and we're all like, you know, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, telling them, and they're looking at us like, what the freak is he talking about?
Yeah, right? And partners as well. We found inside the DEO, you know, one partner would come to an event, get very, very excited, then you go home and the other partner doesn't see the vision. So anyway, something to think about. Start considering bringing your team to these things, even if it feels uncomfortable. Dig into that. Why does it feel uncomfortable? Like maybe it's not the right people, you don't have the right people, right seats. But eventually you're going to have a groupie. If you're a dentist entrepreneur or executive leader, you should have a groupie cast with you at these events.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this was a secret. We keep trying to deconstruct what's working for us, what we're seeing. Jake's in such a great place, having DEO and seeing all the different individuals. So, you know, having been on the consulting side, I know he has a bunch of secrets because he's seeing patterns in the industry. So I appreciate you sharing those, Jake. And hopefully I can deconstruct being like on the ground floor, building this up, trying to bring solutions to everybody, seeing what's happening at the ADSO level as well. You know, we can just bring massive value to this DSO group. So anyway.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you in the Facebook group. Thanks, Emmett.
Thanks. See you.
You guys.